made it to Chirohustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channel and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes and continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Chiropractic Rocks, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, doTERRA, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, and Prime Spine Consulting. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 326 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your co-host Luke Millette, and here's your host, Jim Chester.
So today we have the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Eric Russell. And in this episode, whoever has the most certainty wins. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. This is 326. Today I have Dr. Eric Russell coming in. You are not down at Life College. You're in Texas today. So welcome to the show, Dr. Eric.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Dude, I'm really excited to have you on here, and I'm really excited to share your story and to connect with the chiropractic world with our audience and your audience, and share the big idea. But before we get into this thing known as the big idea, I want to talk a little bit about why we do what we do. Our show does protect free speech in chiropractic. We do protect the sacred trust, and we do support subluxation-based chiropractors, innate intelligence, universal intelligence, and the whole 9 yards. So if you support chiropractic, you support Chiro Hustle, and we support you back. So with that being said, Dr. Eric, it's been a while. We tried to get you on, and we had a few scheduling things here and there, and then you took this new position with Life, and I was like really excited to get you on and talk about that, man. So let's talk about how you got into chiropractic, and then we'll fast forward quick and we'll talk about what you're doing now at Life.
Okay. Yeah. It'll be a nice windy conversation here.
Yeah, let's do it.
I graduated from Palmer in 1996 in Davenport, Iowa, and worked as an associate for 5 years in Illinois when my wife was finishing up her Ph.D. That was interesting because it did two things. One, it got me involved in the chiropractic profession more politically. And the second thing is I started teaching at night. I taught anatomy and physiology at a community college. And I never thought in any way that I'd be a teacher or into academia at all. Fast forward to about 2002, I told my wife, whatever university you get hired at, I'll follow you, start a practice wherever we go. And that took us to a town called Commerce, Texas. We're about 75 miles northeast of Dallas. So my wife is a dean at a university in Texas, and I started practice from scratch, didn't know a soul, and just kind of hung the shingle, made a bunch of mistakes, did a bunch of things that worked, and until fast forward in 2008, I was asked to basically apply for a teaching position at Parker. And I thought, well, the biggest driver for me, Jim, has always been, as a student, there's so many good things you're exposed to and so many bad things you're exposed to. And I just wanted to teach students the mistakes that I made so they wouldn't repeat them, and that can move chiropractic forward. So I started teaching at Parker. It was a 75-mile commute each way. And then I would come home at night, still had my practice. I would rock into town about 6 o'clock at night, see patients for an hour and a half, definitely burning the candle from both ends. And in 2011, I was named president of the New Zealand College of Chiropractic. So that was an incredible opportunity. That was one of those, if I don't take it, I will regret it later in life. But the whole thing is my wife is a tenured faculty member. Now she's dean at this university. So my wife and son stayed in Commerce, Texas, while I went to New Zealand. And it was a pretty easy decision for our family. My wife's like, it's your dream job. You got to do it. We'll figure it out. So I went to New Zealand from 2011 to 2013 as president,
Wow.
Then came back to Parker, and I was there till January of last year, and then had an opportunity to go to Life University as a consultant. So basically, President Rob Scott and Dr. Tim Gross, two great friends of mine, Dr. Gilles Marsh, who's also there. Basically, I'm just helping them out administratively, whatever they need me to do with my experience, I'm happy to help. And they're like, oh, by the way, we want you to teach the first quarter philosophy class. And I've taught chiropractic philosophy since 2008. So happy to help in any way and just whatever the university needs. So I teach philosophy class and I do administrative work for Life University, and just really grateful to be at a school that loves vitalism, loves principled chiropractic.
Dude, what a cool journey. And
Is that windy enough for you?
no, but
To
kudos to your wife for allowing you to go over and be the president, and kudos to you for keeping it together and to be able to go do that.
Oh, I have an amazing, amazing wife, and I just love and adore her, and we got a great relationship. And kind of the same thing happened when that opportunity came up with life. She's like, "We got to do this, let's make it work." And so she's still here in Texas, and I'm in Georgia, and I travel back and forth to see her as often as I can.
Well, cool, man. I think that's a really unique opportunity for you to make an impact in the world and to keep your love strong at home too. So, really, really cool stuff, man. Um, I know that you probably see a lot of people finishing school and going out there. And like you said earlier, you just set your shingle up, and the next thing you know, you have a practice. But if you think about like the new era of chiros coming out, what might be some advice you would impart upon them when they're upstarting?
Well, I think it's, when I was a chiropractic student, we were taught basically, we students graduated with $100,000 worth of debt when I graduated in the mid 90s. And we were told, oh my God, that's the ceiling. There's no way that the debt will ever get higher. The bubble will burst. And fast forward to today, students are graduating with $200,000 student loans.
It's
Depends
20
upon what
years,
you out from.
20 years from then, right?
Yeah, 20 years, doubled. And also, it's for no fault of their own, they're living through quite the unrest in the world. Whether you talk about COVID or you talk about civil unrest or it's just a complicated time. So I can't imagine, as a farm boy that went to Davenport, Iowa and come home on the weekends and stuff. And then it just didn't have this, I guess, the cognitive load that our students have today. So some of them are scared. It's like, how am I going to pay this back? And some of them, there's a fear mentality unless they have the big idea that they live with. So you're there to support them. You're there to help them in their journey, find their voice, because most of them come in, they don't have their voice yet. And they need to go through the process of learning who they are, what they believe in chiropractic, and particularly with how diverse our profession is, to get to the point where they figure out what their voice is. And I tell them they have to rock their voice. They have to make it simple. They have to talk to people. Like one of my assignments that I have for my philosophy class is I make students talk to a layperson about an assigned topic under a minute. And, we're talking only, Jim, 10 weeks into their training, but it's so technical that a lot of these students are having a hard time keeping it simple to lay people. And I'm like, that's your target. That's who you got to talk to. You got to make sure Bubba understands what chiropractic is, what the adjustment is, what benefits of being adjusted are for them and their family and their quality of life. And if you can say that simply, take a very complex idea and make it simple, it's really a simple idea that we make complex, and then you got to make it simple again. If you can do that process, then you usually graduate with a lot of certainty. And I think that's the first attribute of a successful student is certainty.
So foundation for the future, learn how to be relatable to people.
Yes.
And finish up with certainty and how to communicate.
Communicate, keep the message. The 5 attributes for me is certainty, and that comes from your philosophy. You got to know what chiropractic is and where you fit within this pretty diverse profession, but you got to have certainty. And if you don't, I tell students all the time, people will know. Like, the old business thing, whoever has the most certainty going in wins. And if you're uncertain of chiropractic and you're trying to tell someone why they should come, see you as a new patient, it's not going to work. I think they have to be a consumer of science. They have to understand science, relate to science. But all the time, the misconception by students is they think that, oh, what's the science proof? And I'm like, I think I had one patient ask me in 15 years about science. For the patient is, am I in the right place and can you help me? That's what Dr. Barge, taught us. And we talked about Dr. Dan Lyons, our mutual friends. I mean, we were all influenced by Dr. Barge and just, am I in the right place and can you help me? And you can go off into Dr. Barge lectures from there. So those are the first 2 attributes.
I love that. I love it so much. And then I think the last thing that they're always thinking is, how much will this cost me?
Well, yeah, they get it for free and they don't value it. And it's like, I get checked once a week. no matter what.
Amen.
And I'm like, all I'm recommending for people is the same care that I have signed up for myself. And there's no selling, so to speak. When you believe in what you do, you're inviting people for care, and that's a little mental switch that helps students, is just invite them. Don't worry about selling, because fear of rejection, fear of public speaking, they just are behind the 8 ball to start with. You got to get them out of their own way.
I think you're saying so much value there to not only the people that are finishing up, but the people that are tenured and the people that are actually out there, as we say, in the trenches.
Right.
And the people out there that have been doing this big idea work for a long time, is the better you build a community and connect with people and become relatable and come in with the skill set and certainty, the whole thing becomes easy. And I was talking to our other 2 interviews today, Michael Hogan and Liselle Lewis, and I said to them both, I was like, look, the adjustments, like the freedom, the free part. And you pay for the chiropractor skill sets. You pay for their certainty. You pay for their education. You pay for them to be a good clinician. You pay for their x-ray analysis, their skill sets on exam. The adjustment's the part that comes with that. But you pay for all those other things. And that's the extra something that BJ always talked about, is the extra something is the impact of life effect, that when somebody's getting good care.
Yeah, his whole idea on that, the adjustment, that extra something special, wasn't necessarily some mystical thing. It was proper analysis, proper line of drive, proper setup, proper everything on that adjustment. And you're right. That's what patients pay you for, is not it's knowing when, where, why, and when not to adjust somebody and how, and if you do those things, that's what puts you in that elite category of being the chiropractor's chiropractor. I mean, I think aspirationally, you always want to be that chiropractor that people send their complex patients to. Like, I can't get results as a chiropractor, so who's the expert I can send them to? Where they've been, old school, have been Clarence Gunstead or people like that. And there's very few people. If my wife wasn't clearing from her adjustment, if I would say, man, her health depends on this adjustment, who do I send her to? That list is like 5, or less. And so I think aspirationally, every chiropractor should be that chiropractor, the top 5 that everybody sends the complex cases to.
Yeah, I would hate, well, I won't speak out of turn, but I would tell you who my number 1 person is if anybody ever asked me. But I think that it's important to have those people that, that if it's a really challenging thing, that without a doubt, they don't think about how much money is in their bank account. They don't think about if they're going to make, their numbers for the week. Like that stuff's irrelevant to these people. They're really anointed healers. And when they're that good, people line up and they show up, and they don't talk about their numbers or their collections with their colleagues. They don't have to.
Nope. That's interesting, because I was talking to, I was involved in the ICA for a period of time. I was talking to this attorney who helped with all the legal, getting chiropractors dismissed for charges for practicing medicine without a license. He was hired by Dr. BJ Palmer as one of the attorneys. And I asked him at a conference, and this was in the late 90s when I just got started being politically active. And I said, what's the difference between chiropractors back then and chiropractors today? And he said, you know what? Chiropractors back then, all they talked about in the hallway were the adjustment and subluxation. And he said today, which of course was like 1999, all they talk about is PVA and their number of new patients. And I'm like, that just was fascinating to me. Like, both of them go hand in hand, but it's what your emphasis is. And of course, I think the better you are with your service, you'll be rewarded, financially from your byproduct of your service.
Yeah. And I think that that's the most beautiful thing about being a healer and being a chiropractor and being a clinician is you do get a chance to step into your own power and take care of people and have that connection. And I think that it's really, 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 really good. I want to talk more about you a little bit when it comes to how you take off camera. We were talking about like the epigenetic idea. Like if you take care of yourself and you live this certain way, these are the type of outcomes that will happen if you pay attention to, the 3 T's: thoughts, traumas, toxins, and you eliminate those and you work on different things. Like when you get to that standard, we sometimes forget to take care of ourselves. But I'm curious to know, what are you doing to take care of yourself, especially around these strange times?
And don't get me started about the 3 T's. I think that you may be setting me up, or someone told you. I don't think the 3 T's are causes of subluxation. They're potential causes of subluxation.
Okay.
So, well, the reason why is if you ask most chiropractors, they believe in the germ theory, and you're like, no, you're around germs all the time. The presence of a germ doesn't guarantee you'll be sick. It's the same thing with the 3 T's. Just because you have emotional, physical, or chemical stressors doesn't mean you'll be subluxated. It's only if the body can adapt to them. So the 3 T's are potential causes of subluxation, but to think that they cause subluxation is an outside-in thinking versus does innate recognize, respond, and adapt to them. Of course, innate can't do that if it's subluxated or it's diminished in its ability to do that. So I'm okay with it historically. I'm actually going to give a presentation at the history conference this year about it. But it is, it's great to think about the 3 T's, but D.D. Palmer said there's traumas, toxins, and autosuggestion. So there wasn't even the 3 T's. There was 2 T and an A, so it's just like, but, it's interesting as a chiropractor. Some of the things I teach in my students about is, and you can go back and read the green books and all this stuff is there. So the first one is chiropractic hygiene. And chiropractic hygiene was written in Stevenson's textbook, and it was around basically restoring natural conditions. And I was like, what the heck was going on in 1927 when Stevenson wrote this book, that he was advocating for a return to natural environment? And I was telling the students, I'm like, that's 1927. Now you're around all sorts of radio waves, blue lights. Your nervous system is stimulated galore by the food you eat, the light you're exposed to, the radio waves, everything that's made necessary in modern life. And you look at, all the kids are looking at their phone, blue lights coming in, they can't sleep, they're zombies. So number one is taking that concept of chiropractic hygiene. The more natural things are, to me, it increases the likelihood that innate will recognize it and adapt to it. So then what is basically natural? And one is, we're kind of designed, if you're ever staying at a cabin where there's no TV and there's no Wi-Fi, you'll soon find yourself going to sleep around when it gets dark and waking up a little earlier. So, one of the things is proper sleep, and it's how much is enough. I go back to Reggie Gold. How the hell do I know? Like how many glasses of water you need a day? Your body's different. What you need for sleep and what I need for sleep are different, but we should have what we need. And so many of us are just depriving ourselves of just naturally giving our body enough time to sleep. So I don't know. I don't tell patients or students we need 8 hours or 8.5 hours. You just need sleep. And most people are like, yeah, I don't get enough sleep. The second thing is, the more natural the food is that you take in, the increases the likelihood that innate will recognize it. So I tell students, which do you think innate has a better ability to recognize, an apple or a Twinkie? It's like, which one's more natural, which one? And everybody knows the more natural. And you just say, yeah, you should walk around, the outside of a grocery store, and that's the second thing. And I think the third thing is, we're designed for movement, and you can't move as well. All those things are diminished if you're subluxated. All those things are improved if you're subluxation free. But yeah, long walk. So the most influential things for me with health was Mark Sisson's primal everything. If you go to his, and I actually really like Rob Wolf podcast. And if you look at people who talk about health and podcasts, they're not chiropractically categorized this way, but there's an outside in approach, which is the Ben Greenfield, let's hack the body. Everything's a hack, and it's an outside in attempt. And you have the other group, which is like Rob Wolf is like, let's find out what works for you and have you work within nature. So it's not this great hack. It's almost an inside out approach. And what's fascinating when I listen to Rob Wolf is, everybody responds to different food groups differently. It raises blood sugars differently. So you got to find out what works for you. It's the N to the one. It's like, what works for me, Jim, doesn't work for you. So I do more things natural. I try to eat, proteins. I try to eat vegetables fruit, make my foods natural, try to get good sleep, try to make sure I'm adjusted. It's interesting. I had a health condition, or I'm more genetically predisposed to cancers. And I was talking to a doctor, and he's like, and everybody else in my family had cancer except for me. And I'm like, he's like, it's your genes. It just hasn't hit you yet. And I'm like, but I live differently than everybody else in my family. He's like, oh, epigenetics. I'm like, whatever, dude. It's just like, I'll find the people that work with me and my viewpoints. And, if you're that way, that's cool. It's just not the person for me. So I try to live naturally, chiropractic first. I don't take any medications, but if I needed it, I would do it. If chiropractic, there's a limitation of matter and I couldn't overcome that, and then surgery lasts. And that was kind of what I was raised in chiropractic, and conservative to aggressive. And that's how I would pursue my own health.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Chiropractic Rocks, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, doTERRA, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, and Prime Spine Consulting. Let's hustle. I think there's some tremendous things that you're sharing here. And first things first, have you ever heard of the concept of creating a sleep bank?
No, I haven't.
And you got to make deposits daily.
Oh, yeah.
and in turn, to become wealthy, you have to keep a certain amount of sleep inside your sleep bank. If not, you become deficient and lose your mind later in life.
Well, and that's interesting, because I think students would think they can make one massive deposit on a Sunday and make up for it instead of daily, as like you said. There's a chiropractic philosophy concept around that called survival values. And they were constructive and destructive. And B.J. Palmer and R.W. Stevenson talked about the net, accumulative, constructive or accumulative. And I explained it the exact same way to students. You're going to do many things throughout the day that add to your health account, and you're going to do many things a day that take away from your health account. And you just want to make sure that net is as positive as possible. And it's hard to think that every decision you make is positive. You'll get perfect sleep every night. But yeah, the more you do it compared to the more you don't, will definitely have a net positive.
Yeah, and that creates the thing that you've been trending with this whole time, is adaptability.
Oh, yeah.
And when we have the proper building blocks, then we might not get cancer.
Well, and I tell students all the time, just because you have a proper environment doesn't mean it's how well your body can adapt. And of course, thank you to Dr. Rob Sinnott for really pushing adaptability harder in recent times. But adaptability is like, doesn't Nate recognize it? Doesn't Nate deal with it? And of course, subluxations diminishes your adaptability. And there's things you can do if you're subluxation free to enhance it. And Dr. Virgil Strang had a concept called calisthenic dynamic, which is almost like the totality. The more things that you adapt to, the broader range of adaptability the body has. And it's like, these concepts are so cool and easy, but it's like, and these are things you should be telling your patients about. Like, they're not supposed to be talked in a philosophy class and then you forget it. It's like, that's why I make students, I assign them adaptability. I assign them calisthenic dynamic. I assign them survival values or whatever it is, so they can learn how to talk to patients, and patients get this. That's the most, the number one thing, Jim, I tell students is chiropractic philosophy is not weird. Chiropractors make it weird. Like, patients get it. It's like, just keep it simple so they understand it and don't overwhelm them with it.
So I'm going to tie up what you just said into my own words.
Please do, because I'm off.
No. I call it becoming harder to kill. And when I do the things to build a healthy lifestyle by eating well and reading and chilling out and getting a sleep bank going, I become adaptable and harder to freaking kill. Like, the things outside there everybody's afraid of, I'm not afraid of. I still practice a 3-second rule. If I drop something on the ground, it's still safe. And I think, yeah, you're right. The biome around us is full of freaking germs and viruses and whatever the heck is out there, the boogeyman. It's everywhere. But if you are a stronger person, the way that you take care of yourself and the way you protect yourself through all this vitalism, then you're harder to kill.
Well, it goes
Your
back to
body's stronger.
Yeah, it goes back to D.D. Palmer's first question of why. The whole thing about chiropractic is a question of why, which is why two people sitting side by side at a bench, one person gets sick and the other one doesn't. And that's what drove D.D. Palmer to discover chiropractic and its foundational philosophy that was carried forward since 1895.
And then comes the work with the nervous system, and then comes the work with the immune system. And blasphemy, blasphemy. We talk about how the nervous system is a pathway on the immune system and how they correlate with each other, and how when one isn't functioning well, the other suffers. Okay, well, that's chiropractic. And when you remove the subluxation, now both are free to regulate the way they're supposed to, adapt the way they're supposed to, and the body has this innate ability to regulate, which is the real chiropractic truth. In my last interview, I was telling somebody, I was like, look, man, the real problem is that we've created that. And then there's other people out there that are in other fields of practice and interest. They're saying, but that one thing, that wellness part, let's put that into this part of our vernacular. And that one part of adaptability, let's put that over here. And that one part of the adjustment, let's put that over there. And now we have this bastardized like incongruency of the chiropractic messaging in all these other fronts, when back to square one, it was always chiropractic, and they never footnoted it. They never gave it credit, and they're happy to take it without giving anybody any dues for it.
Well, yeah, so much has been given away that shouldn't have been.
Well, you talk a lot philosophy stuff. Let's talk books, man.
Okay.
What are the books that people should be reading? I mean, they could be current, they could be green books, they could be blue books, they could be whatever your chiropractic mindset is. Like, what books should people be jumping on?
I see, everything I talk about goes back to students. I love students. I remember just being in that classroom day one, and I found a great meme, Jim. It's like a guy in a subway dressed in like Christmas ornaments, and the meme says, it cracks me up every time, but the meme just basically says, my video game training has taught me I may need something from this guy later in my quest. And that's kind of how I view myself when I teach chiropractic students. Like, when you're in there day one, you're trying to survive, you're trying to fit in, you're not thinking about 4 years from now when you graduate. So I always give them a recommended book list, and number one, the first thing that pops in my head, I was mentored. We talked about Dan Lyons and Rob Sinnott. We were all, Dr. Brad Polk would be another one. We're all heavily influenced by Dr. Fred Barge. And it's amazing that I can mention Dr. Fred Barge's name to students. They have zero idea who he is. So, any of Dr. Barge's book, Are You the Doctor is one of my favorite. Life Without Fear. That's the one that I would recommend most. And it's a great time to read it. It's more inspirational, more motivational. David Serio came up with the book 33, where everybody wrote a chapter about a different principle. Is I give students Stevenson's textbook, which is my number one recommendation for a green book, because everything's defined in there. That's the book I always turn to and go to. At least 33 is kind of an updated talk about the 33 principles I think students get. So I would do Stevenson's and David Serio's book as well. I actually sought out, and I can't find this anymore, so I'm going to be hesitant to recommend it, but it was Reggie Gold's 12 CDs on chiropractic philosophy. And I had that. I loaned it to a student. I never got it back. And I found it remarkably on like Facebook Marketplace, snatched it up. And the thing about Reggie Gold's CDs, I used to listen to them all the time. So when I was re-listening to those CDs on a drive, I'm like, dang it, I thought this was my original thought, and I'm just subconsciously just repeating the things I learned from Reggie Gold. So those are some great ones. I think your podcast would be another one for people to get plugged in for inspirational, business and entrepreneurialism. I kind of spend most of my time getting people re-plugged into chiropractic philosophy, because that was my journey as a chiropractor. I was kind of burnt out as a chiropractor and thought, why are some people so fired up about chiropractic and others aren't? And that's when I'm like, well, these people all kind of have a healthy relationship with chiropractic philosophy. And that's what made my path turn into all of a sudden learning about it and then teaching about it. And everywhere I go in the world, like every time I go to Europe to speak on chiropractic philosophy, I have a pretty complex talk given or ready to go. And they're like, we want the basics because we never learned the basics. So most of what I do is teach the basics of chiropractic philosophy. So anything you can do to plug in to just get re-inspired. If you're a practitioner and you kind of forgot about it, if you haven't really been in tune with it, there's so many resources to go out there and get replugged back into chiropractic philosophy.
Well, to tie that up again, I just really love what you're saying, and it's old school, but it's developmental. And it's first you crawl, then you walk, then you run.
Yeah.
And when you run, boy, you better get that sleep bank because you'll wear down quickly if you aren't resting up.
Yeah, and they're starting back up the Diplomate and one plug for chiropractors listening. They're starting up the Diplomate in Chiropractic Philosophy again. So check my page, the IC Philosophy Council. It's a great time if you really want to dive deep, because to me, it's not about the sizzle, it's about the steak. I love going to seminars. I tell students all the time, if you give me just a motivational talk about chiropractic, I'll be like, yeah, good. Yeah, get all spiz. But if you say this talks on chiropractic philosophy, sometimes I'm back there going, that's not right. And I judge it a little harder if it's a philosophy talk versus the motivational talk. Because I think you got to really, there's some incongruencies a lot of times that people have that they haven't dived in and thought about. They don't, conflict. That might be messy to dig into that area. I'll just avoid it. But, as Dr. Jen Temple would always say, those incongruencies come back to haunt you. That's really badly paraphrasing what he said. But, him and Christopher Kent would always talk about incongruencies. So you got to dive into those things and your beliefs, and even the things that you are believing that you haven't even thought about. And then we talked about the 3 potential causes and subluxation being the 3 T's. That's something that most people say, and you don't even think about what they're saying.
Well, I know we're coming up on the edge of our chat today, but I want to go like some lightning rounds with you.
Sure. Happy to. I'll try to keep it less lecture focused.
No, it's great. I really appreciate this conversation with you. And I think it's going to be impactful to our listeners. And it's really great to cross-pollinate your position with what we're doing. And thank you for the shout out. I will let you know that we are going to start hosting a library of old recordings of chiropractors on our website. So if you wanted to discuss how we could do that with those Reggie Gold recordings, that would be awesome. I would like, right now we're working on getting some BJ Palmer lectures on there. I just got a box shipped to me of like old cassette tapes from someone, and I have another guy sending some old cassette tapes to me. So I'm going to make sure that I cross my T's and dot my I's and make sure that I can use that stuff onto our website. But I want to create a depository where people can come to get those old audios and old recordings for free. And I just want to have it available to people because, like you said, you had to like go hunt around on Facebook Marketplace or eBay to find this thing. And I don't want that to be the case for the future. I want there to be some MP3s that we host that anybody can come to our website and have access to, and they can get dipped and realize that these things that they're thinking about somebody else has constructed. And I think it's just really cool. But heroes, who are a couple of your heroes in this profession? I know you mentioned Fred Barge and some of your colleagues, but maybe you can give me a short list of that.
Yeah, Dr. Fred Barge for sure. He taught me to be more than just a practice. He did it all. He was a Renaissance man. So Dr. Fred Barge, Dr. Rob Sinnott was a big influence for me. Dr. Marianne Pruitt, Dr. LaMarche was a big influence on me on communication and being more open-heartedness. Dr. Reggie Gold. So kind of mention all those. One person I didn't mention, I'll do 2 more. Dr. Marianne Pruitt, who's no longer living, but she was a steadfast. Everything was black or white with Dr. Marianne Pruitt, and I got a chance to know her. And one of my biggest influences is my wife, who's done a lot and written about chiropractic, but definitely her as well.
All right. Tell me a miracle story. You've been around the profession for a while. Tell me one story that we can send our listeners off with.
Yeah, I was afraid this one would come up. I was telling students of this story the other day. It's like there's so many things that happen in a chiropractic office that we call miracle that they aren't really. It's natural. Mm-hmm. And it's like if you remove the interference and there's no limitation of matter, that body's going to do exactly what it's meant to do. So even though I had patients, I had all these chiropractic miracle babies in my office, it gets to the point as a practicing chiropractor that happens routinely enough, you don't consider it a miracle. And to the patients it is, because they've gone everywhere and they've done everything, but you can't even say that you are an infertility person either. All you do is look for subluxations, and if there's any interference that body functioning as well as it can, it doesn't do what it needs to do as well. And it might be like a 1% difference, or it may be more. So if you remove that interference, there's no limitations of matter. It does all these miracles are natural. It's what your body's designed to do. It's for health. So I'm not a huge fan of miracle stories.
No, it's good, man, because I think that what happens is chiropractic is its capacity shifts someone's state because other people did the wrong thing. And it doesn't matter who it is. It could be anybody with an acronym after their name, but somebody didn't do the right thing that one time they turned up to a chiropractic office, and then that's the miracle, because other people just did not take care of that person with the proper toolkit. And that's the difference. It is the miracle, but it's also the application of what chiropractic does that changes the state of that person that no one else could do before. I got adjusted today. I went to my guy, Dustin Morrison. Shout out to Dustin. Happy birthday. It was his birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday.
And he was doing paperwork today. He wasn't open. And I just showed up and I was like, hey man, I get it checked and adjusted weekly, but I didn't know his office was closed, but I showed up to the office regular time. And I go lay down on the bench and he checks me. And I was like, man, I wish I could do that myself. I was like, I rolled around on a foam roller. I did some stretching and nothing can reproduce what you just did. Thank you. Thank you. Because there's nothing that can replicate the line of drive, the velocity, the certainty that I just got at 2:00 today that any other person can't deliver unless you have a DC after your name. And that's what makes the whole profession so unique, so distinct, so non-obvious, and so damn real. And the big idea is something I really, really, really want people to get the understanding of. If you guys don't know what that is, use your Google fingers and go check out BJ Palmer's big idea and go and look at what this profession stands for. And I'm fired up because I believe in what you do. And I was sitting around when I was 30 years old, 13 years ago. And I said, if I could dedicate myself to one thing that would really matter, what would that be? And I had no idea that working in a chiropractic clinic would lead to marketing chiropractic, to making movies on chiropractic, to podcasting chiropractic, to making friends with chiropractors. And it's been such a brilliant, brilliant opportunity to do what we do and to share this big idea. In closing, is there anything I didn't ask you that you would like to share with our audience today?
I think I want to expand on that last point as my close. Nothing in life is linear. And, when I think about, we kind of talked about my journey here, and it's like I went here, 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 and here, and there's much more to this craziness. Healing's not linear for a patient, and your career path is not linear, but what you can have is that true north compass, and I think that's where chiropractic philosophy comes in. And the more that you're aligned with your personal values, with your professional values, and what you believe in, the more congruent you are with that, the more true north you have. So seek that true north and know, as BJ Palmer said, there's always slipping and checking. You always get a little off one way or the other, and keep going back to the things that got you where you are. And, the stronger you are about those values, those are what serves you in times of uncertainty. So lean into it. Don't lean away from it. And
let's take a page out of Fred Barge's title of his book, and let's all live without fear.
Right.
And with that, thank you for being episode 326 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. We do protect free speech in chiropractic. I think we did a damn good job of that today.
Yeah, absolutely. And send your students to Life University. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being our guest today. And I want you to have a great rest of your night down there in Texas.
All right, man. Cheers.
All right. Thanks for making time. Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.